Welcome to Takeaways, Life Lessons Learned. I am here with Stefanie Tuzman, did I say it right? Who is the president and CEO of Jewish Nevada, also known as Jewish Federation. We'll talk about what the difference is, what that means, if there is a difference or not. You also oversee the JCC, the Jewish Community Center, and we'll go into those acronyms as well. You're originally from West Bloomfield, Michigan. Previous guest was also a Michigander, Michael Saltman. You have a BA from, you didn't know that?
No.
He's like through and through.
Wow.
Yeah, we learned that on Takeaways podcast.
That might be my my shoe-in with him.
There you go. You have a BA from Western Michigan University in Organizational Communication. I bet that comes in handy these days. Your bio says that you've been in the Jewish nonprofit world nearly your entire professional career. Mm-hmm. So what have you done outside of the Jewish nonprofit world?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In 2004, I came back to Las Vegas for a summer. My parents moved here when I started college in Michigan. They were tired of the cold winters and moved to Vegas. So in the summer of 2004, I came out here to spend my summer here, and I worked at Channel 8. I interned at Channel 8. And I made like a video reel, a news reel. I latched on to a reporter who I spent like the entire summer with. And I thought for sure I was going to go back to school and major in broadcast journalism. And so I went back to Western and had a conversation, an exploratory conversation about what that might look like. And ultimately I changed my mind, but I did that. And then
Were you going to be like a TV anchor? Or was that the end goal?
That was the goal.
News
to be a news
or
reporter.
otherwise?
No, news reporter.
Weather?
Yeah, no weather girl. No weather girl. Not a blonde. But just news reporter. And I thought for sure that was going to happen. My when you intern at Channel 8, they let you, like, every day you come in and it's up to you to make the day what you want it to be. So you find a reporter that you want to go with on their assignment, and they let you do a newsreel if there's time available, or you sit in on, So I don't know if you remember the 311 boys case. There was like a bunch of high school boys that threw a rock over like a wall, a retaining wall, and they killed, unfortunately, another teen. It was like a very big case. They called themselves the 311 boys. Anyways, that's what was happening that summer. And so it was very interesting news.
So you were chasing down that story?
I was chasing down that story. I was in the courtroom, reporting outside the courtroom. I mean, you do what you can for the tape, for the reel that you would then send a news station to get hired or whatever. It did not go great.
All right, so media was not your thing, but Jewish nonprofits are.
Well, then I graduated from college in organizational communication, and I started working for an online poker site. So that's another interesting story. I worked for an online poker site. They were based in Curacao, actually, but they had a U.S. office. And that was the height of online poker out here when the World Series of Poker was at the Rio.
That I remember.
And it was big. I mean, it was big. It was huge. And we were their U.S. operations. So anytime they had like a high roller online that qualified for the World Series, they'd fly them out here and we'd wine and dine them. So we did, like a ton of fun, really fun stuff. And it was actually Yom Kippur of 2006 when they called me and said, you got to come into the office. We have bad news. And I was like, I'm just leaving services, like whatever.
I'm hungry.
I went in and they said, it's over. The fun is over. They passed the online gambling ban in 2006. My office, the U.S. office, shut down. There were just 3 of us. I'm still in touch with the other 2 guys. So I lost my job there. And it was then that I got connected to BBYO.
Okay, I'm going to ask you more about your life in
Jewish
nonprofits, but let me finish the intro.
Okay.
So I mentioned that you're what you do with Jewish Nevada and JCC, but I'll also add that you're passionate, you're tenacious, you are anxious, you're a public speaker, you're a social media influencer with your Stefanie Says segments. You're a charcuterie enthusiast.
Yes.
You're a connector, a fundraiser, and you are a CEO.
CEO.
So I'll push pause there and say, welcome to Takeaways, Stefanie.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Those are my words. Let me volley it back to you and tell me in your own words, who are you and what do you do?
I'm a mom. I'm a friend. And I'm just a girl trying to do good. That's it. Just a girl trying to do good. Yeah, I'm all the things you said. I'm anxious. I'm tenacious. I'm pretty self-aware. But yeah, just a girl trying to do good.
So, Mom, talk about your family.
I am married for the last 9 years, and I have 2 kids, one 7-year-old girl named Tova and a 3-year-old boy named Jonah.
What are they into?
Tova is just, I'm sure, like your girls, 7 going on 17, and totally going to give me a run for my money. They both look very much like my husband, but they are both very much my personality. Tova is a firecracker. I mean, she does not take no for an answer. She will push back. She will negotiate. All of the things I did and do still. And I keep telling her that one day those skills will pay off. But right now, get in line because you're 7. But no, they're great. Tova goes to Adelson, and she's really thriving there. And Jonah's at Schenker, and both really excellent. Tova likes gymnastics.
That I know because I see her there from time to time.
Yeah, she's there 2 days a week. She really likes gymnastics. I love when she tries to tell me she's going to be a gymnast one day. I think, oh, that's so sweet. But
don't ruin her dreams.
No. I support everything she wants to do. And Jonah's a boy who loves trucks and cars and trains and dinosaurs and all the things. And so we're going to try to channel his energy into soccer, I think, or t-ball or something like that, but not yet.
A lot of energy?
A lot of energy. Yeah.
So you were starting to say 2006, you found your way over to BBYO, another acronym. That's B'nai B'rith Youth Organization, which I'm very familiar with because I was in it. And I was also the city director for a hot minute here in Las Vegas.
That's how we met.
Yeah. So take me back. How did you get into the Jewish nonprofit world?
Yeah. So this whole poker thing did not work out. And I interviewed several times at Curve & Doak, which is a public relations firm in town, and I never got the job. And I was so disappointed, but I think everything happens for a reason. I really believe that. And a friend of mine said BBYO is hiring. I grew up in BBYO. I was in Michigan region BBYO and loved it. It's funny when you're a teen, you don't think that there's actually professionals that are running that organization. Like I never thought to myself, someone gets paid to do that job. So I had a call with Jamie David, who you know also, and I will never forget, like her kids were in the bathtub. It was the most informal first interview ever, and said, yes, I want to work for BBYO. So I started in 2006, and it was right around 2009 when one of my predecessors, the former CEO of the Jewish Federation, called me and said, do you want to come in and talk about opportunities to work at the Federation? So that's what happened. I went in, I had a meeting with him. I said, no.
That was Elliot?
That was Elliot. I don't know if we can say that. That
Why
was
not?
Elliot. I guess that was
I'm
Elliot.
going to bring him up later anyway.
Yeah, okay, good. That was Elliot. And he sat me down and said, you're doing great work, but you can't be a BBYO city director forever. I was offended at first, and then I thought, well, where am I going to go from here?
He's actually giving you a compliment.
That's right.
He?
And he said, yeah, for sure. And he said, come work for the Federation. And so he brought me on board as director of young leadership.
He recognized talent and was recruiting talent.
Totally. Yes.
All right. So what did you do initially?
I was the director of young leadership. Yeah.
All right, before we go into what is Director of Young Leadership, explain what is the Jewish Federation, why is it called Jewish Nevada?
Yeah. There are 146 Jewish federations around the country. A Jewish Federation is tasked with assessing and addressing the needs of a Jewish community. So here, statewide, we have 76,000 Jews. And our responsibility is to create and...
How many Jews?
76,000.
Okay.
Yeah. And our responsibility is to create and sustain vibrant Jewish life, but also to take care of those in need. So we have a mission statement which fulfills those two things. But ultimately, we're a fundraising organization. When we integrated, which I guess we could get into, but when we integrated with the JCC in 2018, we also became a programmatic organization. And so we do those things side by side.
So fundraising is the Jewish Federation part. Programs is the JCC part. So JCC stands for Jewish Community Center, and this is historically around America. You correct me if I'm wrong. You fact check me on this one. Was it World War I or II when these started popping up? We don't know.
This I can't. Two,
once
I
upon
think.
a time,
After two, I think.
Once upon a time in America, Jews were not allowed into country clubs.
Yeah.
And so in many communities, they essentially built their own community centers.
Yes.
Where they were allowed to go and swim in the pool and work out and do all the things you would do in a community center.
Yeah.
And so many communities in America have these things called JCCs, and that's essentially where you go. And the youth programs are there, the senior programs are there, etc. We've never had one in our community, a physical building, but we do have an organization here that does provide programs, I'm doing quotes around that, for the community.
Right. So it's funny because, again, the JCC has a national movement, as you mentioned. And so people that are familiar with your typical JCC building, they'll come to Las Vegas and they'll call our office and go, "Where's the building? Can I come use the pool? I'm a member here." And so I always go, "Well, no. We don't actually have a pool or a gym, but, here's where we are." But one of the benefits actually of being a JCC member of our JCC is that they can have reciprocity at other communities that do have a pool or a gym. So if you're visiting a community that does have one of those JCCs and you're a member here, you can use your membership there, which is cool.
So back to Federation. This is the organization that assesses the community needs, does the fundraising, and then makes allocations to organizations that provide for the needs that you've assessed that you need to take care of.
Yes.
JCC has historically been one of those things. So the Federation raises the money and makes some allocation for the JCC, but you mentioned 2018?
Yes.
They've become integrated, really from a efficiency and operational standpoint.
Totally.
So you don't necessarily need two of things. You're scaling them back because essentially one is helping to fund the other.
Totally. The organization, the JCC as a standalone organization was just never really large enough to sustain themselves. I mean, it really just didn't make sense. We didn't dissolve the 501c3. It still exists. And eventually, if and when the time comes and they want to, we want to break it off and we can so that they can sort of run their own entity. But this makes a lot of sense on the back of the house.
All right, so
and a lot of federations around the country. A lot of federations around the country are sort of
integrating.
Adopting this model.
Okay, so you're a pioneer. I should add that to the intro.
I guess so.
All right.
Although I didn't have anything to do with it. My other predecessor was really
that's Todd.
That was Todd. And that was him. I mean, I can't take a ton of credit because I didn't become CEO until November of 2018, and we did that in the summer of 2018. So,
all right, let's go back to now. We know the organizations. When Elliot says to you, "You should come work for the Federation," we know what he's saying to you, and now you're in charge of young leadership.
Young leaders, yeah.
And what does a young leadership director do?
So Federation. Our aim is to engage Jews in the community through various affinity groups, right? So common interests, common age groups, common likes, things like that. So there's a young leaders group where we would gather young leaders for programming and connection, ultimately with an eye to fundraise. But it would be bar nights and it would be happy hours and it would be, I'm trying to, off my head, think of, different types of parties around the holidays and whatnot, things that young adults want to gravitate to. But we also have a women's philanthropy group. We have a men's division, which I'm sure will come up. We had, at one point, lawyers, doctors, real estate. We had business professionals. I mean, all these different ways in which you can connect people, Jews, to each other and to the community and to our work with an eye to fundraise.
Is it just Jewish causes?
No. It's not. It's not just Jewish causes, and we've actually expanded quite a bit in terms of our allocations and the agencies in our community that we allocate to. It's a very Jewish value to take care of others, and so anyone can apply for a grant through our grant round and our allocations process. But then, the organization determines by committee who will receive dollars. I mean, we have certain missions and values, and there are things that have to align for an organization to apply for a grant through us.
Okay. So back to you and your little journey.
Yes.
Not so little journey.
Yeah.
So you did the BBYO thing, which is high school. Now you're in the young leadership phase. What'd you do next?
Yeah. So I did young leaders from 2009 to about 2011. there was a void in the women's philanthropy department in 2011. The women's philanthropy director left, and Elliot pulled me in again and said, do you want to serve as the women's philanthropy director? Now, that was a big promotion. That was a big promotion at the time. And I remember thinking, oh my God, the women in our community are, still, this is, I thought it then, but I still totally feel it now. They are powerhouses. We're talking about, I don't want to name names here, but we're talking about the Jane Shores and Cheryl Goldsteins and these just Miriam Adelson. These giants that are so well respected and they are still to this day, women's philanthropy makes up about 60% of the campaign. The numbers have shifted a bit, but they're pretty, they program a ton. They're very generous. They were making the household decisions about philanthropy. And they also had a very particular way of they still do, but high expectations of programming. Their luncheons are beautiful and something people want to go to, and they always have great speakers. So when he said, do you want to be the director of women's philanthropy? I was like, oh my God, this is a big deal. I remember having a meeting, a couple of the women interviewed me, and he gave me some tips, don't say this to them. Don't call them ladies. Don't do, whatever. And I sat in that room and Janice Rounds said, Elliot, you cannot do this to her. She is going to get eaten alive by these women. And I don't even feel bad saying that on here because Janice now laughs about how she was wrong. I definitely rose to the occasion, and she'll say a lot of times she was fearful that I was going to go running.
She said, Elliot, you can't put her in the room with them?
No, just even in the role. She was afraid that these women would sort of eat me alive and I would never survive in this role because they're tough. They could be tough, but
you rose to it?
I rose to the occasion.
And what'd you do after women's philanthropy?
So women's philanthropy I did for most of my tenure at the Federation before becoming CEO, and he combined it with director of annual campaigns. So the positions sort of became one. We didn't have a chief development officer, and Elliot and I worked hand in hand in the annual campaign. And I also spent still 50 to 60% of my time on women's philanthropy.
So not only did you do this big job, you took on another big job with it.
Totally.
Made it look easy.
They they throw more work at you and pay you the same. So
that's how it works,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. So it was great. It was great.
All right. And then between your next move to CEO, there was a Todd in the mix?
There was a Todd in the mix, but there was also a move for me.
You moved,
so
that's right.
You remember I moved to Detroit for a year.
And broke the community's heart.
Well, it was Elliot was leaving in 2015, and John said to me, I have this opportunity. My husband, John, said to me, I have this opportunity to go to Detroit and work at the property in downtown Detroit. They had an MGM Grand down there, and they were doing really great. And it's so funny to think about it now that we're in this post-COVID world where everything can be done on Zoom. But then MGM packed us up, helped us to find a place to live, moved us cross country. But I knew that I wanted to stay in the Federation world. So I started working at the Jewish Federation of Metropolitan Detroit. And it was right down the street from where I grew up. And it was an incredible experience. I was the director of Next Gen, which is their young leaders division. And it had its own department of 8 professionals and about a $2 million budget.
So by title, it sounds like you took a step back, but operationally, not so.
No. And everybody who knows the Federation system in the Federation in Detroit knows they're about a $20 million annual campaign, and Young Leaders was an area that they were really investing in. So Miriam Rosenzweig, who was my predecessor as the director of Next Gen, she's now the CEO in Milwaukee at their Federation, but she, did incredible things for that program and then was ready to hand it off to someone. So the CEO of the Federation at the time came out here to Vegas to interview me. He was at the Wynn for, I don't remember if it was a Shore wedding, maybe, whatever. He was out here and said to me, because he's related to the Shores, which is a whole other story, but and he came out here and we met, and he said to me, this is a big deal. And I remember saying to him, I'm not a visionary. Miriam was a visionary. She had a vision for what Next Gen looked like, but I'm an executor. If you give me a plan, I can put it into action. And he said, I don't need a visionary anymore. I need someone who can execute. So I started working at the Federation in Detroit. And I think that position, the fact that I had 8 team members and a $2 million budget somewhat prepared me for stepping into this role.
And then you moved back?
And then I moved back. So we were there for about a year and a few months. And MGM said to John, if you're going to advance with the organization at all, that has to happen in Vegas. And so...
It wasn't because you re-experienced a winter and you guys were like...
No, in fact, we had a couple mild winters, and I thought that was because of us. We took out we took the mild weather from Vegas with us. But no, and then I had Tova there. Actually, she was born in Detroit, and we just came back. So I called Todd before this was even happening, and I said, "Do you have a place for me? I want to come back to the Federation." And he said, "Yes, actually, there are some things that are shifting around here." And so I stepped right back into women's philanthropy and annual campaign.
So it's like you didn't skip a beat.
It's like I didn't skip a beat. It was like a year and some change. And it wasn't even 2 years, and I came right back.
And then Todd moved.
So in 2018, after they integrated with the JCC, Todd said to me, "I want you to go run the JCC." And I was like, wait, what? I don't know the first thing about running a JCC. It's different than Federation. I mean, it's very different. I mean, it was very different. So I heard him out. I remember being in his office and he was showing me on the whiteboard like what the organizational structure was going to look like. And he was like, "This is a very big deal." He did give me a little salary bump to do it. And he said, yeah. I think at this point I'd gotten something. But no, I mean, and so he said like, he was showing me organizationally and I could see his like vision of how this was going to happen. But I was like, JCC, I don't know the first thing about JCC. And he was like, "Well, you'll just be running it. You get yourself a program director." And he gave me a budget. He said, "Yes, we can hire people or whatever." So that was July. And by November, I was the CEO. So like it happened very quickly. He decided his family that was in Cleveland, his kids needed him. He was doing a lot of commuting back and forth and that he just wanted to be closer to them. And so I don't know if you want to get into that yet, but I can share how I became CEO.
Yeah. Actually, let's put a pause in the story. We're going to come back to it, but let's put a pause here for a second because this show is called Takeaways, and it's about takeaways from people who have influenced me. Believe it or not, you have influenced me quite a bit. And I ask everyone the same question. What has been the single most influential thing or event in your life that has defined or shaped you the most?
You sent this to me the other night, and I thought to myself, God, that's so hard. I don't know that there is one particular moment, but I can tell you that in 2012, I think it was 2012, I found out that the Children's Museum was moving out of their building, their old building downtown, and they were moving into the new space where they are now at the Smith Center. I think it was 2012 or must have been. Anyways, they were hiring for a VP of development, like a chief development officer. And someone sent me the job description and I was like, yes, I want to do that. I want to do that. I interviewed. I made it to the next round. I interviewed. I made it to the next round. Then I was sitting in the CEO's office and they offered me the job. And they told me what they were going to pay me, which was like way more than I was making at Federation. But they told me what they were going to pay me. And I went back to the office and I remember this vividly because it was the same weekend that Roy and Amy Moas got married. And not that that means anything to you, but I was in their wedding and I remember just really dealing with this issue. And I went to Elliot and I said, and I was so nervous. I mean, there's a lot you could say about Elliot. He was not always an easy guy to work for. He was very passionate and we had a great relationship, but I was so nervous to tell him that I was going to take this job with the Children's Museum. I was going to leave the Federation and take this job. And I did. I told him I was accepting the position at the Children's Museum. I'm sorry. I'm letting you know. I'm giving you a month, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I walk out of his office and he wrote me, I wish I still had it, but there's so many moves in between, but he wrote me this 6-page letter where ultimately the crux of the letter was that the Children's Museum can find anybody to fundraise for them. Anybody. But the Jewish community cannot. Like, the Jewish community cannot find anybody who passionately serves the Jewish people like Jews do, because Jews take care of Jews. And ultimately, I thought to myself, like like, wow, like the Jewish community needs me. Like that was literally, that was a pivotal moment. So then I pissed off the Children's Museum because after I had accepted the position, I turned it down. And I mean, I love the Children's Museum. So if anyone from the Children's Museum hears this, I love them.
They can blame Elliot.
I needed to take care of the Jewish people. That was like my pivotal moment in my professional career where I was like, this is, and now I've even used that line on Megan or other people who have tried to leave Federation. Like, no,
Megan's tried to leave?
No, I don't want to get her in trouble. But no, but like ultimately like there is nobody else who can do this job.
That's,
Were you expecting me to say something like
no,
that? What were you thinking I was going to say?
You know what's interesting about this question? So a BBYO friend of mine once asked me this question, and I'm like, wow. Like, what a great question. There's no expectation. I'll geek out a bit on this. I did tinker with the question to take out what person. I don't have that in there because typically the answer is my parents. And so naturally, your parents are a big influence on you, but I have no idea what this question brings, but it's always an interesting answer, and I wasn't expecting that at all.
Yeah, I could have gone a million different ways, but I think in reflecting on my professional career, I have so many days where I think to myself, this job is so hard. Like, why do I do this job? Mm-hmm. And then I think about that. Like, I'm going to get emotional. Like, nobody else is taking care of us.
Yeah, you're on a mission.
I'm on a mission.
Every day.
That's right.
And you get to be on mission.
That's right.
Is that the root of where the passion comes from?
I guess. I mean, I think so. Listen, I could trace it back to my BBYO days. I could trace it back to my grandparents who were Holocaust survivors. I could, there are a lot of things along the way, but I don't think I ever thought I was going to be in this role. I don't think when I got an organizational communication, bachelor's degree in organizational communication, I'd be doing this. I was going to be a news reporter or an online poker site. Like, I don't know.
A weather girl.
Yeah.
All right. No, it's great. I want to pick up the story of Todd leaving and you becoming CEO within a few months.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what happened there?
So I met with Marla Letitia, who was then board chair of Jewish Federation. So we were Jewish Federation of Las Vegas. We didn't even touch on that. And the name change was Todd's fault. So anybody watching this who doesn't like the name change or listening to this, that's Todd's fault. And I still get grief for it. I think there are 3 other federations in the country that use that like statewide name because they're the only federation in this state. But I think it should have been Jewish Federation of Nevada. I didn't get a vote. Anyways.
It's more hip to say Jewish Nevada.
But some people go, ooh, like they'll say like, oh, like go see the federation, and then they'll go, oops, sorry, it's Jewish Nevada. But like we are a federation. And I hate that those two things.
Yeah, when you get into branding, it's like everyone knows what the federation is for 100 years.
That's right.
And so why not just call it that? And then the other thing, well, let's rebrand Jewish Nevada because it's more encompassing of what we're doing statewide, not just here in Las Vegas or Southern Nevada. But also, it's a forward name or a forward-thinking brand in a way.
Right. So that was his.
I get it.
Yeah. So that was his feeling about it, and I don't hate him for it.
I thought Marla was behind it because she's a PR advertising professional.
No, she probably was a part of the conversation, but yeah. So anyways,
Todd. So when we say Jewish Nevada, it's the same thing as Jewish Federation and vice versa.
Yes. If there was one takeaway from this podcast, yes.
For the people that this matters to.
Yes.
And it's okay to say Jewish Nevada or Jewish Federation. Nobody's getting offended.
That's right.
Okay.
So I went to Marla, who was then the board chair, and she had just contracted with a consulting firm, recruiting firm that is pretty big in the Jewish community, and they were going to do a nationwide search for a new CEO. And she said to me, you'll step in this interim role for a little bit. And I was like, yes, of course. And they signed a contract with this new consulting firm. And about a week went by, and I think I had a couple conversations with Todd. And Todd took me to breakfast and said to me, why don't you consider this? And I was like, what? I didn't think that was, I said to him, yes, ultimately I would love to be the CEO, but I don't think I'm ready for that yet. And he said, why? Stefanie, you can do this. You can, and he has been very supportive of me even now. So I went to Marla and I said, what about putting like me throwing my hat in the ring? And I think and I don't want to throw Marla under the bus. I don't think she was in support of it at first. I don't think she saw the vision of what that could mean. I think she had a preconceived notion of what a CEO looks like. And I know that's in your notes, but everyone does. And so they have this sort of preconceived notion of that and that role. And I don't think she saw it. She met with the executive committee. And I know there are some people on that executive committee, like Josh Bianco and Karen Sporn, who were very vocal in support of me being the CEO, which was amazing. And ultimately, Marla was too. And then, so she came back to me and said, so they canceled the consulting firm. And Marla came back to me and said, we want to put you in front of the board and have you sort of interview for the role. So they made a list of stakeholders, past board chairs, the board of directors that I should meet with. And it took about a 2-week sort of, roadshow, if you will, or interview process. And they asked questions. I mean, you saw my Fed talk. So they asked some difficult questions about how I would handle certain situations. And from the very beginning, I said, like, I'll rely on, I'll learn. I'll rely on other resources. Like, basically ask the board to invest in me and to let me do the things I am good at. So
how old were you at this time?
I was 36. So, yeah, I was 36. 35. So at the time, I was the youngest Federation CEO. I'm not anymore, but at the time I was.
Nationally, you're saying?
Yeah, nationally.
All right, so let me just kind of tell you what I heard. So the CEO was relocating. And the board was doing what the board typically does, which is you hire the consulting firm, they do a national search, they find candidates that are interested, eager, and ultimately through the process, the board determines if they're a fit for our community, and that's what they were going to do. And you were encouraged by Todd to put your name in the ring. Why not you? Well, here's why not. You're 35 years old. You've never been a CEO, not even close by age or by positions and whatnot.
Yep.
And so the preconception is we're looking for a CEO, an existing CEO.
Right.
And not to knock anybody. I mean, I can understand that.
Totally.
But here you are saying, hey, I want to take a shot. I don't know everything. I will learn. I'm willing to learn. And if you invest in me, I think I'm the right person.
Yeah. That's what happened.
And then at the ripe age of 35, you became the youngest Federation CEO nationally.
Yeah.
Or internationally.
Yeah. But there's not, yeah.
We'll just say nationally. We don't need to sensationalize it because it's already pretty sensational.
Yeah, I guess. Sure.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. I think that I was and I still believe that I am, but at that moment, I was the perfect person for the role in the moment that the Federation was in. Like there was a lot of community trust I had already built and relationships that I had already formed. And with Todd leaving, it felt to I didn't want the community to feel let down. Like they were going to now welcome somebody else in.
Like Todd was here for a couple of years, right?
He was here for a couple of years.
And that's not a long time, right?
It isn't a long time. It isn't a long time. And I think that with that, like bringing someone else new in would have set the Federation back a bit. And we needed, because there was like, when Elliot left and before Todd came on board, there was a year where there was like nobody at the helm. Leadership turned over. The staff turned over. It was like, I was getting messages when I was in Detroit, like, what's going on with this? Or this is happening, and so I think that having me, a familiar person, step up at that moment was what the community needed.
Yeah.
I was welcomed. Like, it was a process, and I think some people doubted it for sure. Some people probably still do. I mean, I'm not everyone's cup of tea. But I think that for the most part, it was like people were super excited about it.
So you mentioned that you asked them to invest in you. You asked the board to invest in you. What does that mean?
So what that looked like right off the bat was an executive coach. I said to the board, I need a coach. I don't think either of my predecessors had one. But for me, getting an executive coach was number one.
And that's part of your compensation package?
Yeah. Yeah, and now, so for the first year of being CEO, JF&A actually paid for it. They invested in new CEOs around the country. I onboarded in 2018. I went to New York with 5 other new CEOs. So we onboarded together. I still talk to those guys. One of them actually is not in his role anymore, but I still talk to them for the most part. And as part of that, they offered you an executive coach. But I have been working, her name is Amy. I've been working with Amy ever since.
You just threw out another acronym. You have to explain it. What is JF&A?
So, right, I think we touched on this before, but JF&A is the Jewish Federations of North America, but it operates differently than some other organizations in our community because the federation, in order to be a federation and to use the federation name, we pay dues to the parent organization. So dues are calculated based on the size of your campaign and the size of your community. There's a dues formula, and each year our federation is responsible for paying a percentage of our dues or to the national office to be considered a federation, to use their resources and their support. But Jewish Federations of North America is our representative on the national scale. So they're lobbying for us in DC.
Yeah, one of the resources was this executive coach.
Yeah.
All right, sorry. They're lobbying for...
No, I was just going to say nationally that JF&A is responsible for representing federations around the country on a national stage. So lobbying for us in D.C., at the federal level of things that are important, being our voice in Israel and around the world, that sort of thing. So they do provide campaign resources and marketing resources for smaller federations that don't have full departments. Like us, we take a lot of resources from them and we rework the artwork that fits our community, but they do that. They provide those kinds of things. Yeah.
So 2018, you become CEO by title.
Yes.
It's on your business card.
Yeah.
What changes for you?
Yeah. In fact, it was funny. I met with a rabbi in 2018. I met with a rabbi. I'm not going to name names. Who said to me, so now that you're in this role, what are they going to call you? What's your title going to be? And I was like, CEO. So unpack that a bit. You're meeting with a rabbi now. So you're in the role. I'm in the role.
Part of your job is now to meet with your counterparts, constituents, whatever, and one of them is a rabbi in town.
Yep.
There's 20 some odd, maybe more.
A lot of them.
A lot of rabbis in town, and in one of these meetings,
this one might remember, but he probably would never remember.
In one of these meetings, this person is looking at you, knowing that he's meeting now with the quote unquote head of the federation. And he's asking, what is your title going to be? Because it can't possibly be that you are the CEO.
Right. Elliot was the CEO. Todd was the CEO. But now what's yours going to be? What are they calling you? And I was like, CEO. What else would they call me?
What do you make of that?
I mean, the same thing that we've been saying. I don't think I was the typical,
You're just
expected CEO.
You're just a kid.
Yeah. I don't think that they thought. And also, listen, I think that I don't like to play this card because I don't really feel at a disadvantage. But sometimes it does come up that because I'm a female, you're treated differently in this space, especially among the rabbis in town. Not all of them. And I shouldn't say that. I have a great relationship with them, and but in this particular moment, I felt like that was part of it.
We can jump to it because I want to spend some time here on this. You're giving a lot of disclaimers and a lot of, not all this and all that, but the reality is there's a reaction to you in this role, you being a female. I mean, there's video here, so someone's going to watch this on YouTube and can see you, but for the listeners, can you describe your physical stature?
Yes, I'm 5 feet on a good day. I wear heels so that I appear taller, and I'm female.
So... You and I were at a summit in Austin.
And you heard this interaction, right?
So I'm giving a firsthand testimony.
Okay, good. Because sometimes I say it and people don't believe me, but you actually
firsthand testimony. Okay. My wife, Danielle, was there. A lot of people from Las Vegas were at this summit.
Yes.
So you were there both as a participant, an attendee of the summit like we were, but also in a work capacity.
Right.
A lot of people there that you're meeting with. I think, did you speak on a plenary at that one or no?
No.
Not that one.
No.
But you're there in a work capacity as well.
Yes.
And so in between the sessions, at the bar, we would hang out a lot in this 3-4 day summit. And I saw it firsthand where you would introduce yourself. My name is Stefanie. I'm the CEO of the Jewish Federation of Las Vegas. And it became a joke. The response was, "You're the CEO?" And it was not once, it was again and again. And you had a meeting with someone and they said it and you came back, you're like, this is just, and there was a spectrum that I saw. At first, you are met with that reaction. You are the CEO? And it's like, fuck you. Yes, I am the CEO. And I'm like, yeah, why is that so hard to grasp? Or why is that the reaction? And it could be the range of things we talked about, that yes, there's a bias against female CEOs, your physical stature, your age, because you are still young and all that, but over and over. And it went from like, not anger, but not a pleasant reaction that, why can't you believe that? So it's not that you're even new anymore in this role. You've been doing it for quite a while. You have a great reputation around it. You've got incredible results. And then it became kind of funny. I think, I don't know, maybe as you realize that you're not crazy and that other people are seeing that people are reacting to you this way. Maybe it was a validation when it started to become kind of funny. And then in a way, and I hope that you are leaning into that. Like, yes, I am the CEO. And not with a spite or a chip, but like, yes, I am the CEO. And look what I can do and what I have done and what others who look like me will be able to do and are doing.
I certainly don't make apologies or excuses for being in this role. I hope that I don't. And if I do, you should call me on it. You don't,
and you shouldn't.
Right. And I actively, I think intentionally, like, don't. And so to that point, when someone says it to me, I'm like, yes, I'm the CEO. And I do think it's kind of funny, but I also think it's insulting. And I also...
That's the word, insulting.
Yeah. And I also understand, I guess, that maybe it's because it's a city like Vegas or it's a state like Nevada. It's a big deal. And people, I think, look at us and like, because this is not, I don't want to like insult any of the other communities, but we are not a small shtetl. We are like, this is a big city and a big state. And I think that people think that comes with a big territory and a big job and all of the things. And so it's insulting, but it also...
6 foot, not 5 foot on a good day.
Right. Someone who's a male, someone who's 55, someone who's, and I think, and so that's sort of what I chalk it up to. I don't make excuses for being in this role. I worked hard to be in this role. I work hard now. I may not have, I may have been in the right time in the right place in getting this role, but like, I work hard to keep it. I work hard to, build the federation and to perform on our, executing our mission. But yeah, it's like, it is a joke. It just happened at FedPro, where I was like around Federation colleagues. People said that to me.
What is FedPro?
FedPro was the Federation's professional conference, which happens once a year. JFNA, that parent organization, puts it on. There's a cost to attend and register your Federation professionals, but there's different tracks for each professional in the organization. So there's a marketing track, there's a finance track, there's fundraising. And so we send a few members from our team each year.
Is there a CEO track?
Yes, there actually is.
And so you gave a Fed talk, like a TED talk at Fed Pro.
Yeah.
And you shared the video with me.
Yeah. I don't know that they actually called it a Fed talk, but they should have.
Behind you was like the
Fed
same
Pro.
kind of white block letters.
Yeah.
FED. I didn't see the pro initially.
It said Fed
so
Pro.
It looked like a TED talk, basically.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm calling it a Fed talk.
Yeah.
So talk to me about that process. You get asked to speak.
Right.
Did they ask you because they knew you had some kind of special subject matter expertise? Did they ask you because...
So I don't know why ultimately they asked me, but I can tell you this. I have been to several Federation conferences throughout my tenure in working in Federation, from young leaders to women's philanthropy. I've been to conferences around, like I went on 2 overseas development conferences to Israel and to Ukraine. Like, I've been on a lot of Federation conferences, and they always have the same speakers, and they always target the large federations that are raising tens of millions of dollars. And so over the last few years, I have been very vocal about that. Like, my disappointment in seeing the same people, and to not have Federation JFNA categorizes federations by different groups. There's large federations, which is your Miami, Chicago, New York, Detroit, that raise over $20 million each year. Mm-hmm. There's large intermediate, there's intermediate, and there's small. We're an intermediate federation. We're between a campaign of $3 to $7 million, and we're among intermediate. So some of the other colleagues in that intermediate group are Nashville, Austin, with your buddy Rabbi Septimus. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's a group, Portland, it's a large group of my colleagues, but I have been expressing this frustration for the last few years. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but
they're
maybe.
Fine. You want to complain, you change it.
I don't know how, but I do know that a couple weeks before the high holidays, in September, mid-September, I got a phone call from one of the talent people at JFNA who I've worked with before. Her name is Jess, and said to me, we're putting together the plenary schedule for FedPro, and we want to interview you to be a potential speaker at a plenary. So it wasn't like they were asking me to do it yet. I thought they were, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so honored. And then she said, well, I have a few questions for you first.
Pump the brakes.
So, yeah, exactly. so she said the prompt is going to be, what is a leadership quality that you possess that you've carried with you through your professional experience, right? So being, in my case, CEO, mm-hmm. There were 3 other speakers. It ended up being that there were 3 other speakers, but I was the only CEO. So that was the question she posed to me.
Do they all have the same prompt or different prompt?
No, we all had the same prompt, and it was
leadership quality.
Yeah, leadership quality. So she asks me this question. We had this great conversation. I told her about my trajectory and how I got to where I was, where I became CEO. And then she said, okay, we'll call you back. So I sent a follow-up email, thanks so much for the time, or whatever. A week went by, and she sent me an email saying, we'd love to invite you to do this. So the wheels started turning just before Sukkot, which was September 29th. And I actually was leaving on a family trip to the Caribbean. We were taking my kids on a cruise, my kids on a cruise. And when I got back, I was supposed to hit the ground running. They had paired me with a coach, and they said, this coach is going to work with you on your script, but they're going to work with you on your delivery. You're going to meet with them 3 or 4 times before the plenary happens. We're going to stage everything. There's music, there's this, the whole thing. Then Israel gets attacked on October 7th. And the prompt shifted to, what is a leadership quality that you've possessed throughout this crisis? How did you show up for your team and for your community? And so I hadn't started writing a script yet because I had just gotten back from this trip. And so it shifted. And so the process was long, and it was very time consuming considering everything else communities were dealing with, especially us when Israel got attacked. But it was great. It was great. I wrote the script. They wordsmithed it. They helped me to identify, really what I wanted to focus on. And then lots of rehearsals. I recorded myself several times. They provided feedback, and it was good.
So I want to dig into this more about just public speaking and your role in any leadership role. You are required to do public speaking, whether it be just one-on-one or small groups or in front of 10,000 people. You've done it before. You've done it plenty. I talked about your Stefanie Says segments that you record every Friday and send out by email to the community, to tens of thousands of people.
Did we talk about those already? No,
I mentioned it in your intro.
Oh, well, I want to, yeah, okay.
But this is different, clearly. This is not like you're writing a speech and saying it a few times to yourself and then delivering it with written notes.
Right.
This is prime time. This is TED Talk level.
Right.
So what about the process did you learn that were takeaways for you that you didn't maybe know previously or that you would take with you going forward for any other public speaking engagements?
Right. So I want to take it back because when I became the CEO, I know that the community wants to hear from the CEO. They have the highest open rate of any one of our emails because there's something different. I don't know why. Again, this is the vulnerability in me or whatever. I don't know. But I don't know why people care about reading an email from me. I'm not sure. But they do have the highest open rate. They did when Elliot...
The CEO of the Federation sends an email to the community.
Yeah.
Usually on Friday.
Yeah.
Before the Sabbath.
Yeah.
Okay. And those emails have the highest open rate.
Well, so they have historically, even when Elliot sent them or Todd sent them, anytime an email has gone out from our CEO, they get the highest open rate. So I knew when I became CEO, I was going to have to figure out how to communicate with the community. And I knew right away I was not going to write letters. I am not a writer. That has never been a thing for me. I have taken writing classes. I can do it. But in fact, you asked me how the board invested in me when I started. I hired a ghostwriter because I was like, if I am really going to have to start communicating with our community, I need someone who's going to take my thoughts and put it down into a beautiful, I didn't think I could write like Elliot or Todd. They're excellent writers. And so I did. I hired a ghostwriter for a short time and then ChatGPT came about. But anyways, so I started these videos, these Stefanie Says videos, because I was like, well, I am much better when I can do spoken word. I mean, I still have to write the comments, but it's really just me having a conversation with the community. I share my thoughts and feelings. And so these videos became really popular. They're sort of cheesy because I call them Stefanie Says. But anyway, so in doing this process for the Fed Pro, which I think was different because, and I don't know how many people watch my Stefanie Says videos. I mean, it goes to a lot of people, but I don't know how many people actually watch them because there's 14,000 people in our database. There were 900 of my colleagues in this room at Fed Pro, and that was far more intimidating because they're all leaders in their own community. But working with the coach taught me so much about developing the story in a thoughtful way that doesn't leave the viewer wanting more, right? You have to present this problem, you have to dive into it, you have to wrap it up at the end with a solution and leave the audience really feeling like they have the full picture. And then if you've watched my Stefanie Says, most of them is me sitting at my table and holding a cup of coffee, a Jewish Nevada cup of coffee. And there's nothing in that coffee mug, but the reason why I do that is because I learned that when I'm standing, I sway, which is really bad. And also I use my hands like this. And so I sit at the table because I do better and I focus more when I'm sitting at the table.
And it's if the audience, the person watching it, is sitting across from you and you guys are just having a cup of coffee.
That's right. It feels much more natural to me.
You're not speaking like a speech to me sitting, you're elevated at the podium, I'm sitting down. We're just across from each other.
Exactly. And it feels much more natural and comfortable for me. But Fed Pro, I was going to be standing in the middle of a stage.
It's TED Talk.
That's right.
That's what it was.
Yeah. And so I was going to be standing in the middle of a stage. And so part of what I worked on, I think three video takes was simply my posture, what to do with my hands, and right? So what was I going to do just standing in the middle of that stage?
What did you do with your hands?
Well, I did end up using them a little bit, but mostly they were in front of me. I didn't have pockets and so I don't know. I mean, you can practice and practice, but when you get on that stage, so some of it goes out the window.
Well, you did very well.
Thank you.
It was very good.
Thank you.
You mentioned October 7th. This is when Israel gets attacked by Hamas. They went into neighborhoods. They went into a music festival. They took 240 some odd hostages. They killed 1,400 people. Now, you and at your core and your staff are fundraisers. And every day you wake up, you go to work in this community, like you said, to assess the needs and match resources with those needs. And yet this thing happens 3,000 some odd miles away. As a Jewish professional, how does your life change when something like that happens?
I mean, in that moment, we woke up and I was in the Bahamas because I said I was on a cruise and we docked in the Bahamas and I turned to John and said, my vacation's over. Like, I knew right away that no matter what plan I put in place for my team while I was away so that perhaps I could have the opportunity to disconnect a bit, that was out the window. Like, when Israel goes to war at any time, I mean, and we have been here before, and I did not recognize in that moment, and I'm not sure anybody did, but when I saw the news headline that morning, I don't think anybody recognized the magnitude of what we were dealing with. And so in my mind, I thought, okay, Israel got bombed again, or there was a rocket, or there was a something, and we're at war, and it's crisis mode. And so anytime this has happened before, we immediately open an emergency fund because we know that there are donors in our community, there are people in our community that will no doubt give to Israel, to support Israel, to want to be able to do something. And so for us, that's an immediate need is we want to raise dollars and direct those funds to Israel to take care of whatever they need right now. But then as the situation started to unfold, like, I realized that not only did I have an obligation to provide for the community, to provide for Israel and raise dollars, but there was this obligation to provide for the community and to support what's happening here, because people were just reeling out of control as, like, more news came out of what was happening here, like, or what happened there. It was just a lot. And then also my team, like, I needed to make sure they were okay. We were drinking from a fire hose. And so I was in the Bahamas and I thought, okay, the first thing we did was open this emergency fund. But then it was like, how quickly can we bring the community together for a gathering and to talk about, what has happened, or to hear from, our elected officials or whatnot. So we just spun into action and everything changed. I mean, it is so hard to be a Jewish communal professional on a normal day. And then when something like that happens, it's just...
Well, there's layers. I was an outsider looking in, and I'm observing. So you and all of your team and other organizations too, other professionals in Jewish organizations, they have their body of work that they have to do on a day-to-day basis, on any given day. And like you said, it's not easy. Now, add to that, there's a response to this. The response comes in a couple forms, what you talked about. For you guys open a fund because people like me in the community, we want to do something. What can we do? And your job is to tell us, here's one thing you can do. There's probably a lot of things you can do, but under your umbrella as a fundraising organization, if you want to donate and have the funds and know that the funds are going where they're needed, this is an avenue, and that's your core avenue.
Right.
There's also response as individuals. Now take your professional hat off, you and all your team. We all got attacked. And like you said, we've been here before, but it was very quick when the realization was this is not just another skirmish or rockets fired. This is something more and different.
Right.
And then you feel as an individual, all your team is feeling, you start to feel and process what that, the gravity of that, the mourning of that, the anger of that, the how did this happen? How could this happen? The what do you mean how many hostages?
Right.
From this many to that many to ultimately what we know is over 240.
Right.
Then came another wave of response that totally caught me off guard, which is in the U.S., the anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
And now it's like, wait a minute. This is Hamas and Israel, but now you want me to die because I'm Jewish? And here in Summerlin, spray painted on a wall in a very nice neighborhood. It's not like this is in some faraway place. This is, I run around these neighborhoods. Death to Jews. Mm. And so now as a Jewish professional, you don't just get to feel like what I'm feeling, which is, me processing that as an individual. You have to process that as an individual. And then layered on top of that is the Jewish professional response, which is for the entire community. And it's probably, I'm guessing, amplified.
Yeah, well, I didn't even touch on that piece because I didn't. But it's like after something like this happens, it's not business as usual for us, right? And so you completely have to pivot just all of your programming, your language, your marketing, just everything you're putting out to the community. So that's one layer of it. But then yes, to your point, it became quickly apparent that we were not just dealing with a situation in Israel. We are not just dealing with a situation in Israel and between Israel and Hamas and supporting them from afar. And I can reflect on, the war that happened in 2021, right? We were here before. But that, again, didn't even amplify anti-Semitism in the way that we're experiencing it right now. And so we are now it's like a fight for the survival of the Jewish people.
And so before we sat down, you were telling me you were at UNLV as a Jewish professional. Can you talk about what did you do there?
Yeah. So, I mean, and here's the thing I struggle with too, as a federation, as a professional. Like, I think me personally, I struggle with this. I rely on my colleagues a lot to find out what is our space? What are we supposed to be doing here? I mean, there are, as you alluded to, there are organizations in town that are doing this work or doing similar work. And what is our role as a federation? And so, I rely a lot on the agencies in our community that have very specific focuses around anti-Semitism and, Israeli-American engagement and things like that. And part of what I talked about in my Fed talk is about my leadership style in terms of collaborating with other community organizations as a way to pull from each other, to pull resources from each other. But now I think we're in such a battle that it's not just one person's job to fight anti-Semitism or to worry about that. And we've got to approach it from all different angles. So I say that, and then coming back to what you were saying about UNLV, we oversee Hillel, which is also different than a lot of other communities. Our federation is a fully functional federation. We oversee the Hillel, not only our JCC, but the Hillel at both UNLV and UNR.
And Hillel is?
Hillel is that's great. It's the organization on campus that oversees Jewish students, right? So they and we have a director, and they bring the students together for engagement and programming and connection, but they also encourage the students to, similar to the BBYO model, but to really be responsible for creating their own programming and their own footprint on campus. And so the students have been feeling uneasy and unsettled since this war broke out, and they've been experiencing anti-Semitism on campus. And I was just saying to Michael before we started that I think we somewhat live in a bubble in Nevada because we don't experience quite the levels of anti-Semitism that other college campuses do, thankfully, but it's still there, and it's still definitely concerning to our students and to us. So the students actually organized a meeting with President Whitfield today and members of the faculty, and I went just to be supportive of them. And for the first time ever, I didn't say anything, which is so not like me, but they were extremely prepared. I mean, they had talking points, and they were very well spoken and poised and just shared incidents and facts and concerns for their safety and disrupting their class life and their study. I mean, it was really excellent, and the president was very receptive.
So let's touch on that, because I'm at the point now where I feel like I'm in a dream and I'm screaming and no sound is coming out.
Right.
And it's, when we say this anti-Semitism, I experienced anti-Semitism, they're experiencing anti-Semitism. What does that actually mean? What is an example that a student gave? Don't say they experienced anti-Semitism. Say what was the incident that occurred.
Yeah, there were a couple that they drew upon. One was vandalism to a car, swastikas,
So I'm a student at UNLV. I walk up to my car. There's a swastika spray painted on it.
Yeah, totally vandalized.
And so my car is being vandalized just because I'm Jewish. And the symbol obviously is a hate symbol.
Yeah. And, we've done...
so that'd be the equivalent of an African-American kid walking up to their car and the N-word is spray painted on their car.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we've done the Hillel students have organized peaceful rallies on campus and different types of things. And people have walked by and spit on them or yelled anti-Semitic remarks. I don't think it's anything as bad as what we saw spray painted, like "Death to Jews," but it's these very public rhetoric of from the river to the sea, which is essentially a call for the elimination of the state of Israel and Jewish people. And so
that one, I'm not saying it's okay. I think a lot of people who actually say that are just caught up in a catchy chant and have no idea what the hell it actually means.
Yeah, well,
the walking across someone and spitting on them, you know what you're doing.
totally.
And what makes that okay?
Right.
That's the part where I feel like I'm in a dream and I'm screaming and no sound is coming out.
Right. And so
that's what anti-Semitism, when people say that's what it is. Imagine
Or the Nazis were right. The Nazis did it right. Hitler should have finished the job. I mean,
and so that's like to say the KKK is right and should have finished off all the African Americans in America.
Yes. Right. And, the university, like most places, they try to fall back on this freedom of speech type of thing where, right? Like, and I'm not an expert by any means, but they try to fall back on this, like, well, we have freedom of speech. And even today, President Whitfield said, and he was extremely supportive, but he said today, we struggle because we're this urban university with no boundaries, no barriers. We're in the middle of a city, and anybody is welcome to use our university and come onto our university. And we have a freedom of speech. We used to block it to one corridor. Now it's really just wherever it is. But the difference and what the students raised to them today is when these protests become violent, which I think spitting on someone can, or this language is now inciting violence, right? So that is not free speech anymore.
Would the president be okay with someone under the guise of free speech standing on campus saying the N-word and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speak for him, but they're
correct.
Yeah,
not to put words in anybody's mouth,
right.
But there's this thing where when it's Jewish stuff, it's okay. If it's the N-word, it's not okay. And to me, that's where...
Well, I mean...
It's either people don't know, like back to the river to the sea thing, or, Hitler was right, maybe as a throwaway line, which is also not okay. It's just as bad as saying the N-word, which everyone, I believe, knows is not okay.
Right.
And would not be protected by anybody under free speech.
Right.
On a college campus, because it's hate speech. At some point, it crosses over from saying what you want to say to you're saying something specifically because you hate and you're trying to incite something.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, it was interesting because the students, we used the word anti-Semitism today a lot in the meeting, and that was pretty much the concern. And at one point, Jolie Brislin, who is the regional director for ADL, turned to me and said, "Did you hear them say anti-Semitism at all?" And I was like, no.
Them,
and so
them being
the faculty.
The faculty.
And so Jolie at the end said, it's really important that you actually say the words that you condemn anti-Semitism. Mm-hmm. And so they did. And so they are supposed to be releasing a statement on Monday morning that speaks to that. I think it was eye-opening for them. I think the students did a phenomenal job of talking about their concerns and that, they're not feeling safe on campus and it's disrupting their classroom and their study time. So I think they did a good job. And I'm hopeful for the university. I know that President Whitfield was meeting with Governor Sandoval today, or former Governor Sandoval, but now the president at UNR, and they're going to come to
I guess that's what you just talked about there, is like that intricate balance. Well, it's free speech, so it's okay.
Right.
But when you say those words, we condemn this, it makes it not okay.
That's right.
And sometimes it really is just that simple. Because if people are saying this, it starts with 1 or 2, and then nobody says, hey, this isn't okay. Then it's 4 and 10, and nobody's saying, guys, this is not okay. All of a sudden, it's a mob of people and someone's getting lynched.
Right.
And that sounds like maybe I'm exaggerating, but that's literally how it happens.
Right. So were you at the community gathering on October 9th?
At Temple Bet Shalom? Yes, I was there.
So you were there. So it was so important that right out of the gate, we had Governor Lombardo there and Sheriff McMahill and Senator Rosen denouncing Hamas and actually saying, right, like that they stand with Israel. Mm-hmm. Like these, that makes a huge difference. That language, right? Those words make a big difference.
Yep,
not just showing up for our community, not just being there, but actually saying that made a huge difference.
And I know a little bit about Sheriff McMahill and his background in terrorism worldwide.
Yeah.
And he was very clear about Hamas and who they are and what they're about.
Right.
And so, I mean, Lombardo is right there with him.
Right.
Both of them coming from McMahill, still the sheriff in police force, and Lombardo coming from that world.
Right.
So let's switch a little bit here. Let's go back to your earlier life in your Jewish nonprofit work, where you and I were on the rooftop of a venue here that just opened, and you said to me, "Look, we are restarting the Jewish Nevada men's division, and I want you to put your name on it." Something to that effect. How do you remember that conversation on the rooftop?
I don't remember it at all. I barely remember what I ate for breakfast yesterday. I love when you tell that story because I'm like, wow, it makes me sound so good, but I don't remember it. I do remember that you and I started that endeavor years ago, and then I moved, things changed, leadership changed, and there was no doubt in my mind that if we were going to get this going again, you were going to be the guy who was going to help me do that. And I know that you don't like leadership roles or titles or things like that. I'm going to
elaborate on that. It's not that I don't like them, but I keep going, and I'm going to talk about titleship versus leadership.
Yes, okay, we can talk about that. But I knew that like that you were the person I wanted to do that with. I mean, you had a vision, and we were not done with the work we had started on.
So this, you talked about affinity groups earlier, and it's really about community building through finding commonalities, either if you're the group of doctors or lawyers or women's philanthropy.
Right.
This was for what we call the men's division, and we were very intentional about defining what that is. And these are professional men. We kind of picked an age range, but we were loose about it because too young and you start getting into young leadership, it was okay at a certain age. And then too old, first of all, if you're 60 and 70, you don't necessarily want to come to a social gathering at the latest, restaurant that opened up. And at the same time, if you're, 20s, 30s, you don't want to hang out with a bunch of people that are not your demographic.
Right.
So we wanted to find that sweet spot. And the first one, you said, look, just put your name on it. We're going to take care of everything. And it was steak and whiskey tasting at the Capitol Grill. We had a private room.
Right.
And we had the brand ambassador from McAllen come.
Yep.
And Drew Weintraub, who was at the time the managing partner of Capitol Grill, gave us all a kitchen tour. We got to go in the back in the refrigerators and see how they age the steaks. And that's all very interesting.
To you.
To me. Well, steak and whiskey is interesting. When you talk about this core, this demographic, to pretty much anyone who says, yes, I want to go to that because that sounds interesting.
Right.
The other things that does is there's like a status and stature that comes into that, meaning I'm the kind of person that goes to these. Those are the kinds of people that I want to be around. People like us do things like this. But there's also a commonality. Anybody who says yes to something from the Federation, which is a philanthropic organization, has some kind of values. Otherwise, they wouldn't say yes. Or they're just saying yes. Maybe they have those values inherently, but they're not as conscious. But they're saying yes because someone who has similar values says, I'm going to go to this thing. You should come with me.
Right.
And that's how these things really start and then take form and then ultimately flourish. So at first, I was just, put my name on it. Great. I'll show up. I'll tell a few people that I'm going. And you guys did literally all the work. I just showed up. I don't even know if I said anything in the opening remarks. I might have at that first one.
Yeah.
But that was it. It was a very easy yes thing for me to say and do.
Right.
And then it was like, all right, something hooked me in there. I think I know what that something is. But it was, you mentioned that your work is hard. And in your world, you do outreach, quote unquote outreach. And outreach from these organizations, being a lifelong participant in this, looks and feels a certain way. Even using the word outreach to me was a signal that was like, that's the old way to do things. If we're going to do this, we've got to reimagine it. We're not calling it outreach anymore. I'm not the chair of this. That's where the unofficial part came up.
Right.
And we really took this approach that, when me and my buddies get together, there's not an email graphic that's created, like an invitation that says we're having an event and this is where you're going and what it cost. It's an email or a text, and it might be like, excuse my language here, but it might be something like, hey, motherfuckers.
Right.
Drew's got this room at Capitol Grill. We're going to get the brand ambassador from McAllen. We're going to have steak, drink whiskey, show up. Probably, idiot or something like that, we'd say to each other. Cost is going to be this. Everyone chips in. $50 is going to be great. If you don't come, you suck. That's how we communicate with each other. Now, we didn't take that much liberty, but we really took a different approach in that the emails were not these posters, graphic posters.
Yep.
It was a conversational email that one guy would send to another. And I don't know how many events we've had at this point now. We started this when was the Capitol Grill?
2017.
2017. It's now 2023.
We've had
so that's 6 years worth of events for those 20 over, call it 30 events.
Yeah.
And again, the whole point of this thing at the end of the day is that you are a philanthropic organization and your job is to fundraise so that you can take the money and give it to or allocate it to where there are needs.
Yes.
And that's the approach. It's not a social club at the end of the day. It's not a networking group, although both of those things are byproducts.
Totally.
And I don't know how much money we can accredit back to the men's division at this point, but it's not insignificant anymore.
Well, you know, it's funny because when we first approached this, you were very adamant about we're not fundraising. We're not fundraising. And we didn't. But then ultimately I said to you, Hayim, this is like, you know, we have to somehow get these guys to now step up. But there are two layers there, and you always remind me of this. There are the guys who just want to connect with other Jews in the community and be a part of our work, and that's totally fine. We welcome them all the same. And there's an event in particular for those men who are making a commitment of $1,800 or more to the annual campaign, and that one is for them.
That's a giving level that you guys have defined.
We've called it the Solomon Society, and we've said that men who give at that level are a part of this society. And some of them come and some of them don't. And we welcome people all year round at these men's events that either are at that level or not. And it's okay. That's okay too.
And so I spent a good 5-6 years working on this as the unofficial chair.
Yep.
And I promise we'll get back to leadership and titleship and why I insist on that. I insisted on that term. But I say, as I think back on that conversation, I say that you activated me. So again, people have values, and actually Mike Saltman, who was a previous guest, previous episode, talked about this also. You know, he is at the pinnacle of success in his field of commercial real estate development. He's literally traveled the world. He's had all sorts of ventures, and he said he's always given back. He's always found time to give back. One takeaway, I'm going to sort of divert here for a second. So Elliot Karp, who we've talked about, who is the CEO before you and in a way activated you. Mm-hmm. I interacted with him when I was, you know, I grew up here, went to UNLV. I left for a year as a consultant for my fraternity. I came back. I was BBYO city director, and then worked in first construction with my dad, and now and then in real estate. And I don't remember who or how or what, but Elliot had a conversation and said, okay, this is your path for engagement. I think I was the Hillel chair because of my familiarity with the dynamics of a college campus because of my fraternal work. Mm-hmm. And then that put me on the board of the federation. And at one of these discussions, Elliot said to me, there's 3 things you can give. Now, I'm a young professional. I don't have, you know, forget $1,800 a year. I barely had $180 a year to give. But he said there are 3 things you can give, or anybody can give, under the umbrella of philanthropy. It's your time, your talent, and your treasure. And so the treasure one is obvious. Please give a donation of X.
Yep.
The time and talent isn't as obvious.
Right.
And it's also hard. Like, how do you distinguish between time and talent? Because one is the other in a way. Time is all of them, but one is the other. But I got to spend 5-6 good years in this unofficial capacity as Jewish Nevada men's division chair, creating something alongside you and then Megan and then Andrew, your team, for the Jewish community, for people like me, to activate them. And it was a real gift that you gave me when I look back on all that, to not just give treasure, but also time and talent, dare I say. But there I say. What do you make of that?
So I totally, well, there's a lot there. First of all, I totally agree with him. And it's still sort of, you could say the three T's, the 3 W's.
What are the 3 W's? Wealth,
wisdom, and oh my God, I shouldn't have said that because now I can't remember what the third one is.
That's all
it's
right.
Something that's equivalent to time, wealth, wisdom, and oh God, I can't remember. Anyways, okay, it'll come to me as we're talking. So I still totally agree with that. I absolutely do. And I have never, that's why I've never pushed you, even though I've wanted to, and people keep saying something to me about you serving on our board again, because I know that we are going to get way more out of you in an unofficial sort of capacity than an official
Isn't that
capacity.
fascinating?
I love it.
Wow.
And I think it's great. And I think there are different kinds. It's actually, you have given me that takeaway, because now when I am looking for good leadership or board members, and even when we find a good leader, it does not mean they have to be a board member. And I have said that to members of our board, that like that does not mean that's the right place for them. So I do appreciate that. But the treasure part has to come at some point. It just does. And I don't, we can't do our work without it. But they're all equally as important. I'll just leave it at that.
The treasure. So when we were starting this men's division thing, and we were dueling back and forth about, do we fundraise, do we not?
Right.
To me, it was always there was at the time this sentiment about the federation that it's you start with your handout, like give us money, and
Totally.
The dance was build a community first, show them what you do.
Yep.
The money will come.
Yep.
And I am now also back in the camp of, you guys exist for a reason. You shouldn't apologize for it, and it should be, written on your forehead. We're here to fundraise. So participate to the level you want. We already you kind of illustrated. There's so many ways to engage. But at the end of the day, you guys are here to fundraise to help other people. It's not like you're fundraising for your own own pocketbooks.
Don't make excuses for it, but you have activated me in that way. And part of what I've taken away is that, people give to people. And there is a sense that you have to build relationship first before you go in for the ask. So we have made more of a conscious effort of that. But there are still going to be people, there are to this day in our community that think federation asks a lot. And we do. And it goes back to what I said at the beginning, because Jews take care of Jews. And on October 20th, we had our Women's Philanthropy United luncheon, which is our biggest attended luncheon of the year. And every year, somebody gives the pitch, and it's like such a big deal about who we ask to give the pitch. And it's always a lay leader, because I feel that the women in that room need to hear from one of their peers about why they're giving to Federation, and not from me about why they should give to Federation. And this year, because, we were dealing with a very different time, I said to Megan, I feel like I want to give the pitch at the luncheon. And I don't know if you heard any feedback because your wife was there, but I shared with the room exactly that. Like, yes, we ask for a lot. We know we ask for a lot, and this is why. And I talked about Israel, and I talked about our support for the community, and I talked about how Jews take care of Jews. And I got 2 new $100,000 gifts that day.
That's a big deal.
It was a very successful pitch.
People give to people. Titleship leadership. So I went to UNLV. I was involved in BBYO, which is, in addition to being a youth group, it's also very leadership forward. I was involved in my fraternity. I had leadership positions there. I ended up working for my fraternity, and I was in the headquarter office in Indianapolis the summer before we dispatch and go visit college campuses. And this concept came to me then. And I remember I wrote a little blurb about it. My boss at the time, Andy Boran, said he saw it and he goes, I want you to elaborate on this. I never really did, but I'm gonna come back and ask you about when you became CEO by title and when did you become CEO by identity. But it doesn't necessarily, I learned this at a young age, and I believe this. I don't have to be the chair of anything to affect positive change or influence. And that to me is the difference. And specifically with the men's division, like when the guys get together, no one is chair. There's no title, there's no formality to it. You know who the leader is for whatever it is. And sometimes, by the way, it changes. I'm sure in your friends group, there's the party planner that dials out the itinerary. There's the one that makes sure that the bar is stocked with all the good stuff, or the charcuterie board per se. No one says you're the this, you're the that, you're the that. It just kind of happens.
Right.
So in the spirit of what we were doing there, that whole concept was recalled, and it became a thing. Like, I'm the unofficial, I'm the unofficial. The other thing that we broke in a way is you don't have to have board meetings or committee meetings to get things done. And a lot of it was we did at the end of it, but it wasn't like every month we have a committee meeting for the sake of having a meeting. We had one when we all needed to get together and really put our thoughts to paper and a plan.
Right.
And then we just went and executed.
Right.
And a lot of it was simple emails or simple texts, group text, and so much got done that way. So that was the titleship leadership. So in 2018, you received the title of CEO and you had to work with an executive, you got to work with an executive coach.
Right.
When did you start to identify? Why are you laughing?
Because I don't think I have. I really don't think I have. I'm like, I don't. I'm going to keep going.
It's good. Oh, this.
Listen, I think
What the hell does a CEO do?
I don't know. Oh God, it's so funny when I started the process of this Fed talk that we were talking about, my coach said to me, okay, let's talk about what you want to talk about. Let's start to like map out your speech or your script. And he said, what is the leadership quality that you think you possess? And I said, I don't know, ask my team. And he goes, whoa, wait a minute. Right there, that's a leadership quality. Like you want to ask your team what they think of. And I said, yeah, like I don't want to say something. And he goes, why? And I go, I don't want to say something that they don't think is true of me. I might think I possess this quality, but what if they don't think I possess it? I don't know. I just don't feel like a CEO. I know what it means. I know what my responsibilities are, but I don't take it lightly by any means. I don't know. I don't feel like I'm a CEO.
What do you feel like?
Like I'm like a girl trying to do good for the community. I am just a professional. Sometimes I have a big responsibility of taking care of our team, really, trying to keep them focused and engaged in the mission, moving us forward and raising money for the community and, the partnerships and the stakeholders and all of the things that I'm responsible for. I totally understand it, but I don't know. I don't feel like I'm a CEO.
Isn't that interesting?
I don't know.
That's so interesting.
Is it?
Isn't it?
I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a theme. There's so many themes that like keep coming up as you talk. One of them is self-awareness. You're clearly self-aware.
Yeah.
It's funny, like in that question, it's like, oh, I don't know what my leadership trait is, but you know that you are not a visionary. You know that you are, what did you say here?
Can't even read.
I don't know, but there's clearly self-awareness. Like even your Fed talk about you're anxious. I mean, the whole preamble was how anxious you are. And
yes.
The other side to that, the wrap up in that, here's a takeaway.
Yes.
When crafting a speech, start with the problem, elaborate on the problem, and then wrap it up. Your problem is that you're anxious. You have this problem. You elaborated through your experiences. You talked about October 7th and what happened. And then ultimately the wrap up was that your team said that you were calm throughout this. You were calm for them because, hey, that's what a CEO does when their people need them to. But you're clearly self-aware. And it's such, I don't know if it's irony or what it is, but like, I don't feel like a CEO. It's not a bad thing. It just is. The other one is you're underestimated.
I've always had this, I don't know, this is not a therapy session, but I've always had this feeling of like I have to call myself out on something before someone else does type of thing. And I don't know if that's a
how do you mean?
Meaning like I point out my negatives so that nobody else points out my negatives. Like I'm the person who will recognize I'm loud and sometimes obnoxious and sometimes I say things that are a little off color and because I don't want someone else to say that about me. So I'm my own worst critic to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
And
what about the underestimated?
Am I underestimated by other people or am I underestimating myself?
Both.
Or both. Yeah. Well, the first part about underestimating myself is because I don't want to overestimate myself, right? I want to surprise people, I guess, a little bit. Be underestimated by other people. I don't know. I've definitely developed more confidence in this role over 5 years, for sure. I used to hide from certain things and certain responsibilities, or I'd go, no, don't ask me to do that. Ask Jolie, or ask, there's another professional colleague in our community who can do that. And now I've grown a lot more confident. And putting myself front and center so that our federation can be front and center.
Cool. Let's kind of wrap with this concept of philanthropy, because that's what you do. You're on one side of philanthropy, which is asking. The other side is giving, which is where most of the community is, or most of the people listening to this. And actually, you're on both sides, I imagine, because you give just as much as you ask. Maybe not just as much, but certainly I know that you give as well. You walk the walk.
Yeah.
What is philanthropy a value? Is it an action? Is it a thing that you kind of do to make yourself feel good? How do you think about philanthropy?
Personally or as an organization?
Well, you got to start personally first.
Yeah. So for me, personally, it's a responsibility. It's an obligation. It's a priority. And yes, it comes from values, right? Like we're taught in the Jewish faith about tzedakah and tikkun olam and taking care of those in need.
You gotta explain now. What is tzedakah?
Tzedakah is charity and giving back, and tikkun olam is taking care of the world, or literally repairing the world. And so we're taught those kinds of Jewish values, and so philanthropy and that sort of thing comes from values, but it's also a responsibility and obligation, all of that. And for work, it's professionally same, right? It's a responsibility. It's an obligation. But I always, and it's not easy, right? Like we said that. It's not easy to be a professional. It's also not easy to ask. But I said in those October 20th comments at United that it's one of the easiest things I do in my job is to ask somebody else to contribute to the Federation, to give us money. Because I'm not asking for myself. I'm asking on behalf of the Jewish people. And I'm asking for you to consider as one Jew helping another Jew. And so it really is the easiest ask. And I think the reason that, and I sometimes I get a little frustrated personally and professionally too, but personally when my friends, my family, they don't support these organizations, this community in the same way that I do. And you can't, it's hard. I have to sometimes remove my emotion from it. But there are people that I want them to feel the same passionate way that I do about supporting Jewish life here. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah. So zooming out on philanthropy, like you have a very specific corner of that,
right?
Which is Jewish causes.
Right.
There's all sorts of philanthropic causes from,
right,
animals to kids with cancer to you name it. 3 Square locally, which collects and gives food to people who literally don't have food in our community. But you've got your very specific brand of it, and you're doing the work, the professional work of asking. And again, 3 Square has their equivalent of Stephanie's and Megan's and Andrew's and so on. But when someone sits down, a professional asker sits down with a potential donor, what's actually happening?
I mean, you're connecting with the person. People give to people. For me, it's a conversation about their likes, their interests, their struggles, their family, all of those things. And it's connecting with them as a person. And then ultimately, we don't have, I would say, this is a whole other podcast, but I would say one of the challenges we have is really telling our story, which you've helped us to dive into. And that's because the Federation's work, as we've talked about, is so vast, right? Yeah. We do so much. And it's not always known to the community or to the person I'm sitting down with. And so for me, it's a connection, a people-to-people connection, but then I hone in on what makes that person tick and really focus on where the Federation the Federation's mission and values can align with the individual's mission and values.
So in the work that we've done together, not just on the men's division, you allowed me to work with you and your team on some marketing stuff. And I draw a lot from a guy named Seth Godin, who's a prolific marketer.
Right.
One of the things he talks a lot about is not his specifically, it's his friends. A guy named Zig Ziglar, who was, before the Tony Robbins era, he was like the personal development guy. If anyone's listening, do yourself a favor and go Google Zig Ziglar and watch some YouTubes of him, because not only is the material amazing, the way that he delivers it is even more.
Right.
But one of the things Zig says is be a meaningful specific, not a wandering generality. And so the Nevada Childhood Cancer Foundation is as specific as you can get. This is kids with cancer in Nevada.
Right.
That's a meaningful specific. Jewish Federation, the common cause is Jewish, but when someone gives you money, it can go to a spectrum of causes from, like, where does it?
From day school scholarship, Jewish education, to Jewish overnight camps, to support of Israel, to, senior services, Holocaust survivors. I mean, you name it, we touch it. And
Jewish family services.
Emergency services, food insecurity. I mean, all of those things.
Loans.
Yes.
You guys get into like interest-free loans for people that need them.
Babies, everything from
and
babies
so that's
to
where it
puppies.
becomes so to speak, wandering generality. But at the same time, it's when I get what you're saying now. When you sit down with somebody, it's okay, what are you passionate about? Because believe me, I've got a place for your dollars. The other thing that Seth Godin really made me aware of in his book, This Is Marketing, there's like a little tiny paragraph in an obscure chapter that talks about when the fundraiser sits down with the donor. I'm remembering it as best as I can, but it's something to the effect of when the fundraiser sits down with the donor asking her for $1 million, that might seem absurd to the fundraiser because they don't have $1 million. They can't even fathom how much money that is, and how could somebody possibly give $1 million? But to a donor that does have that kind of capacity, it's not an ask for $1 million. It's really an invitation. How does he say it? It's really the fundraiser is offering a gift to the donor, because if the donor says yes, the value that they're going to get back is worth measurably more than that $1 million.
Yeah.
Now that's the material measurement. They have it to give.
Right.
But when they say yes to giving, then they're engaging in philanthropy. No one's ever felt bad probably about giving money to philanthropy. In fact, you always feel pretty good, whatever the range is. If it's $20 to somebody on the street, or if it's $100,000 at your latest luncheon, it's a feeling that you're getting back because you're able to give, and therefore you're giving, and so you're helping someone. And that was pretty eye-opening to me.
Yeah.
It's not I have to feel uncomfortable asking you. I'm going to ask.
No,
you decide if you're going to say yes. If you say yes, what I'm really doing is I'm not asking you for anything. I'm inviting you.
Yes.
And I'm giving you actually a gift.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's so fascinating.
It is. And I think as a fundraiser, as a philanthropy professional, you have to have that mindset in order to be successful.
Yep. I've got an ending question before I ask. Is there anything else you want to add?
No. I talked about a lot. It does go very fast.
All right. I have a 2-part ending question.
Okay.
We'll start with the philanthropy thing. Because
did you talk to my team, by the way?
A little bit.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm curious what they said. Okay.
I'm not going to tell you what they said.
Okay.
It's woven into what I was asking you.
Oh, okay.
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
So we're talking about philanthropy. What advice would you give people about giving and philanthropy?
Oh my goodness. Okay. What's the second part? Do I have to answer that first?
What advice would you give somebody about becoming CEO?
Oh, okay. I thought maybe I couldn't do one and the other would struggle the other. What advice would I give somebody about philanthropy and giving? I'm going to think about this later and kick myself for the answer, I'm sure, because hindsight is always 20/20. But I would say to do it. I would say that I think I hear too often that, oh, I can't afford that, or, oh, I can't make that work, or, oh, that's not that level, like I can't reach that level. But I think that if we set a level of $365 and that doesn't feel right to you or feel good to you, that I would love for more people to come back and go, but I'll give you 180 or I'll give you 200. Like, do it. Do it at whatever level feels comfortable to you. Do it. It feels good to give. It feels good to help other people.
And for someone like you and I grew up with, you talked about tzedakah, charity, like throughout Hebrew school, throughout the youth groups, there was always these little boxes called tzedakah boxes, and it was coins. Mm-hmm. And it was what you're talking about. You give what you can, but
that's right.
The premise is that you give.
Yes.
You always give.
Yes.
We have like a default. What about someone who didn't grow up with that?
I mean, the advice is the same. I think, to your point, far too often I'm not given the opportunity for the conversation, right? So like to your point about the organization that is very like that whose name very clearly describes what they do, we are not that agency or organization. And so sometimes at first ask, the answer is no, but I'm not given an opportunity to have a conversation or to open the door for conversation so that the person can ask me questions about the agency and find out more and allow me the opportunity to invite you to join us in that. And so I don't know how to really answer your question, but I want to encourage more people to ask questions about giving and about the organization and to find a commonality there, a common ground.
And for anyone listening that the Jewish Federation is not their thing, I would just add, find your thing, give if it's not money or if it's not the amount of money that you're being asked, some amount. And if it's not money, it could be your time or your talent as well.
Again, this could be another podcast, but I also get frustrated when someone says to me that the Federation is not their place. And not just because I'm the CEO of the Federation, but I think the means in which we raise dollars, the women's luncheons, the men's event, they may not be your thing, right? Not you in particular, but in general, that might not be your thing. But I don't think that there is anybody who can argue with the work of Federation, with the amount of support that we provide to our community to sustain and build vibrant life, that anyone could argue with that. You don't like our means of getting there, maybe, but you can't argue with what we do.
I would just offer an amendment to the means part. The luncheons and the galas are the things that you might visibly see.
Right.
I can give you a personal testimony. That's not the only way to give or the only mechanism. You know, Jared and I partnered up in business pretty young age, and a Federation person came to us and said, you are the most consistent givers to BBYO. Not the most dollars, but most consistent. Year over year, you too have the record of consistent givers. And again, it's not like an extraordinary amount of money, but it was any kid who needs a scholarship for a convention, you know, spring or fall convention.
Right.
Just come and ask for it. And we did all the time. So it couldn't, you know, maybe it's not the fill out the donor card at the end of the luncheon. There was that way to give that we kind of created, not really on our own, but because it was already there, but that's what we said we want to do. The other side of the coin, at the end of last year, you taught me about this concept called a donor advised fund, which I thought was really cool. And I've told a couple people about it since.
Keep telling people about it.
What is that?
Oh, a donor advised fund is quite simply put a charitable checking account. So we 501c3s, some of them who operate foundations have the opportunity to hold donor advised funds. You as the donor deposit or donate a certain amount of money to the Jewish Federation. You receive the tax deduction in the year in which you donate those dollars, but then you can distribute them or make recommendations for their distribution over a lifetime period. So the ones that Federation holds, or the donor advised funds that Federation holds, the donor has the benefit of depositing or donating those dollars to us and then making recommendations to any other 501c3 that aligns with the missions and values of Jewish Federation. So it does not need to be a Jewish agency or an entity in which you make a recommendation for a donation to, but it has to align with our values. So
what I liked about it is that if I'm going to give, I might as well just put it in this bank account.
Right. Well, that's the other thing. The dollars are invested. They are diversified over a couple of different, what do you call it? Like money markets and platforms. And so they're invested dollars. You can earn interest on the dollars and that sort of thing.
And so it sits there, and I know it's there. Yep. And so if I do get invited to the Nevada Childhood Cancer Foundation dinner, and I do feel inspired, and I do fill out the little card thing, I can just say, hey, take the pledge out of my donor advised fund.
That's right.
So of all the organizations that ask me, I'm able to say yes, and it's all coming out of one account, and I don't have to worry about tracking or if I have it or if I don't have it or how much.
You receive a letter at the end of the year that shows your distributions.
That's a pretty cool thing.
Yes, we do all of it.
So why wouldn't the Federation be for everybody?
That's right.
Jeez.
We are for everybody.
All right. What advice, now that you're a seasoned CEO, what advice would you give somebody about becoming CEO?
Take the leap. You don't have to know how to do it all. part of what I talked about in the Fed Talk was the sense of vulnerability in recognizing your strengths and recognizing your weaknesses, asking for help along the way, and really leaning in to to what you can offer, what you can provide.
Awesome.
Do it. Become CEO.
Become CEO. Give all your money to philanthropy.
That's right.
That would make you very happy.
That would make me really happy. Well, I don't want someone to become CEO of Jewish Nevada, at least for a while.
All right, I'm going to say thank you for coming on. And I'm going to say thank you for taking the leap and becoming the CEO of Jewish Nevada, Las Vegas. I clearly am a fan of yours.
Thank you.
I talked about how you've activated me and given me this gift to engage not just with writing a check, but also with some time and talent and doing work in the community that I found very meaningful and impactful. And I don't just speak for myself, I can assure you. I talk to many people in the community about you behind your back and sometimes right in front of you.
Great.
And we're all, you said people give to people. We are, all of us, my cohorts out there are all activated really because of you and your passion and your leadership. And it extends beyond you. It's the team that you've been able to not just attract, but also nurture and develop. It goes to Megan and Andrew and all the other folks there that we get to interact with. And that's, to me, a direct reflection of your leadership as CEO.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefanie.
Thanks, Chaim. What an honor.
Thank you for listening. I would love to hear from you about your takeaways from this episode. Make sure to leave us a comment or leave us a review. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can hear future episodes as they come out. My name is Hayim and Stefanie. Tune in next time.